I am here in my kitchen and I am going to make cherry pie. I'm calling it Teri's Cheery Cherry Pie. Cheery Cherry Pie. Cheery Cherry Pie. Cherry Cherry Pie, Cherry Cherry Pie. I know a lot of you think that I'm crazy. I'm not. I just have a good spirit in my kitchen. When you cook, you need to bring like your happiness to your food. I think it actually makes a difference. A lot of you seem to have seen my cherry pitting video from a while ago where I used this handy tool, one of my favorites, a cherry pitter. The only way to pit cherries. In fact, it was, I think, my biggest Instagram video ever. A lot of people commented that it had this very relaxing, sort of ASMR quality. If you haven't seen it, go check it out. This is what I have done with the cherries. I took them out of the freezer last night. I had them in the refrigerator defrosting, so you definitely want them defrosted if you are using frozen cherries, and you want to drain out as much liquid as you can. I have been marinating these cherries in some cornstarch and some sugar, some Frangelica, powdered vanilla. It's 5 cups of cherries approximately, 3/4 cup of sugar, 1/4 cup of cornstarch, teaspoon of vanilla, tablespoon of Frangelica or almond extract, and a squeeze of lemon. And I think that's everything. I wanted to show you that. I'm going to put it back in the refrigerator because I want it to be cold when I assemble the whole pie. And now we're going to move on to my favorite, just perfect pie crust. So this is my pie crust recipe that I think just works great every time. It's not just the ingredients, but to me it's also the way I do it. So I start with 2.5 cups of AP flour. I use organic AP flour. And then I'm going to use 2.5 cups of butter. I also have 2 teaspoons of sugar and 1 teaspoon of salt. And I'm just going to blend those around in there. I don't sift it. I've tried it. I find that it doesn't really make a difference for me. So that's that. But the biggest trick that I have found is that I grate my butter and then I put it in. So I have 2.5 cups of butter here, and I'm just using it's cold butter, by the way, it must be cold. And I'm gonna grate it down onto a piece of parchment paper. And then just as you get to kind of the bottom, just go a little bit slower so you don't get your nails or your fingers. So when that comes out, that's what that looks like. And then I'm just going to put that right into my flour. And then I'm going to grate the rest of it. It's all about not over mixing, I think, to get that really flaky crust. So I will try to show that to you as well as I can as we're going along. I love making pies for people that I like. So I've been saving these cherries for a while in my freezer to make a pie for someone that I like, but also when I had time. I forget where I learned this trick about grating the butter. It was not, I can't claim that it's my genius idea, but I have been doing it for a long time, and I do think it works really well. So you notice like how I'm trying to handle the butter as little as possible because of course my hands are warm. That's why I'm using the parchment paper, and that's why I'm using the little wax paper that the butter comes wrapped in. I've got my pie dish here. Before I mix anything, that I'm going to take this little leftover butter, and then I'm also going to take the butter that was on this little paper, and I'm just going to put that around the edges of my pie plate, so that hopefully that'll help the crust come right off when it's time to serve it. So I have my cold butter grated into the flour, which has the little bit of sugar and a little bit of salt in it. And so now I'm just gonna begin to sort of toss that. And like I said, I'm really trying to not handle the butter any more than I have to. But I wanna break this up until I sort of get like, not pea size, but you'll just see that the flour begins to start to stick to some of the butter and form kind of little tiny balls. Without overworking it, we want it to be in that stage before we add our ice water. Because once we add the ice water, it should all come together pretty quickly. So this is what it looks like right before I'm gonna put the ice water in it. So I've got 1/3 cup of ice water. Depending on the flour, I may or may not use all of that. So I'm gonna start with almost all of it. And then I'm just quickly gonna, you're kind of doing this motion, and also sort of squeezing it together, pulling it all sort of from the bottom. But again, trying to get it to start to form into a ball, or 2 balls. So you can see that's sort of the texture of it. It's still falling apart, but it's holding together a little bit. And like I said, this is the part where you don't want it to be too wet and you don't want it to be overworked. I think I'm gonna add just a little bit more water, probably not this entire 1/3 cup. I think that's gonna be enough. And you'll see that it all kind of starts to come together. And it's sticking to my fingers, which it's supposed to do. Okay, so then I just start to press down a little bit, but I've like really got this whole thing. And this I think is actually a little bit wet, but that's okay because we can add a little bit of flour to it when we're rolling it out. So all of my flour is now in one ball, and you'll see there's you can see the striations of butter, of the yellow of the butter. You probably can't see it from there, but I can see it. And you want that. You really don't want to work that out of your dough. You just want your dough to be all together. I'm gonna form it by kind of holding it in the center and squeezing. I'm gonna form it into 2 hopefully pretty matching sized balls. Oops. And then these are gonna get wrapped in saran wrap, and I'm gonna put them in the refrigerator for about 10 minutes. Keep them cold. Oh, you love and hate saran wrap. It's like a love-hate relationship. It's very useful, but it also is a pain in the ass. So I'm trying to keep it so there's no air in there. So I've got one, got my second ball of dough, getting that wrapped up. All right, those are going in the refrigerator. And something recently I've been doing with my saran wrap is it's reusable. So a little bit of a pain, but you can rinse it off. If it's something like pie dough, you can rinse it off, let it dry completely, fold it up, put it back in your drawer and use it the next time. So I've got my one ball of dough, the bigger one, out of the refrigerator, and it's nice and cold and hard. I'm gonna sprinkle a little flour on my rolling mat here. Like I said, I think this dough is a little bit wet, so it's probably gonna need a little bit more AP flour. And then I'm just gonna begin rolling this out. I'm trying to make, it's gonna be a 9-inch circle that's gonna go in here. And this is gonna be my bottom crust. Again, trying not to handle it too much. And I don't know if you can see, you can really see those butter striations in there. So I like that. I want that to be there. I think that's gonna make it nice and flaky. I think one of the reasons I like making pies is because it's sort of a good workout too. And just keep working around in the circle. I'm gonna do this until I think it's the right size, but also I want this dough to be about between 1/8 and 1/4 inch thick. I think if you've watched any of my food videos, you know that one of the main things for me is just showing my love to people with food, and so I think about that as I'm rolling. I think about who is this for, and I hope they'll like it. Okay, so that looks like that's gonna be pretty good. That's gonna fit. My trick here, it's a tiny bit messy because I've got a little bit of extra flour there, but I'm gonna pick it up like that. I'm gonna try to get it so that it's centered. I think that's probably pretty centered, and then I'm gonna lay that across, and then slowly sort of start to peel this back. Doing pretty good. It's already getting warm, I can tell. There we go. All right, all can be fixed. All right, so I sort of like to go around and kind of let that drop into the pie a little bit more. All right, I'm gonna take a knife. I'm gonna go around the edges. I'm not gonna cut it right up to the edge, just I'm gonna even this out. It's still hanging a little bit over because I'm gonna use that to fold together with the top to sort of make a pretty edge. So I'm gonna take a fork. I'm just gonna do some holes that will help let the steam out. And then that is gonna go back in my refrigerator for another 15 minutes because I want the whole pie, when I assemble it, to be cold when it goes into the oven. So while my other pie crust is in the refrigerator cooling, I have got the second half that I'm gonna roll out. I'm gonna cut the strips that are going to decorate the top of my pie with a lattice look. That looks pretty good. Okay, I think that's thin enough. All right, so I think I'm gonna do 4 stripes one way and 3 stripes the other way. So that means I need 7 stripes. And I'm gonna do them about a 1/2 inch wide. Probably if you were Martha Stewart, you would do this with a ruler, but I'm not. That would be awesome, but I'm not. She's awesome, but I'm just gonna do it like this. I'm gonna eyeball it. So this is what the lattice strips are gonna look like. You can see some of the butter in the crust. So I'm actually also going to put this on a cookie sheet and put this in the refrigerator so that this is as cool as it can be when I'm working with it, so it'll have less chance of falling apart. Oh, if you haven't done so already, turn your oven on to 400. Okay, it is finally time to assemble our Cheery Cherry Pie. So the first thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take my mixture that I've been letting marinate for a long time, the cherries, and I'm gonna put that in the bottom of the pie. So I'm using a slotted spoon so that most of the juice will drain out as I'm putting it in here. I just don't want the pie to be too syrupy. I want to be able to cut a nice piece of pie. So I think all of this juice is probably too much, but I might just put a little bit. So I'm just gonna do that much. Then I am going to start to cover it with my lattice here. So let's see. That looks like it'll go on there. This is the part where it's math. I don't know. Let's see. That one will go over. I think that's gonna fit there. And then this one is gonna go this way. And I'm gonna have that under there. So it's going to go here. It's going to go over. Let's go under. So you're sort of just doing an over-under pattern. That's going to go over. This is going to go under. It's going to go over. So if one was over, then the next one is going under. A little bit of a weave, and that's going under. It's not as hard as I'm making it. I'm sort of stumbling around. It's actually, you'll visually, you'll see it. You'll know just over under with the pie crust pieces. So now I want to crimp together my edges, just pushing them down to make sure that they blend into the bottom pie crust. I'm going to kind of like fold that bottom crust up together with the other one. Just kind of curling up the edges so that the lattice work and the bottom pie crust are definitely fused together. And then the last thing I'm going to do is I have just one egg that I've sort of whisked up with a fork, and I'm going to just brush a light egg wash around the whole thing. So I'm going to do the edge first. I might come back in here and crimp this again, just to make sure it's how I want it to look. And the egg wash will help your pie crust turn really beautiful golden brown. So then I'm going to go across the actual lattice strips themselves. Make sure I get every piece, because the last and final step before it goes in the oven is I'm going to sprinkle all of this lattice work with some sugar. And I'm going to use a raw sugar, so it'll just sort of sparkle. That's what that looks like. Okay, so I'm just sprinkling generously over my pie crust. All right, well, there you go. So you can put this back in the refrigerator and chill it again, which I think I'm gonna do for like another 10 or 15 minutes, and then put it in the oven at 400 on a cookie sheet for about an hour, but you can keep checking it. When you've got a glass pie plate like this, you can see through the sides, so you'll be able to see if the crust is done, if it's a nice golden brown. Getting ready to go in the oven. Next time you see me, I'm gonna be baked. The pie, not me. Well, maybe me. Maybe me and the pie will be baked. Anyway, that's my cherry pie. I hope when you make one, you enjoy it and have as much fun as I did. So it's been about an hour, maybe a little bit longer. Remind you again, the oven was at 400, cooking our pie on a baking sheet, and yeah, that's still really hot, so I'm gonna have to use this, but I wanna be able to show you. There we have it. There is our cherry pie, and it looks like we have just the right amount of juices. It's not gonna be too juicy. One of the most important things with your cherry pie after you get it to this stage is to let it cool before you present it to your friend or guests. That can take between 2 and 3 hours. You don't want to put it in the refrigerator or anything. You just want to let it cool at room temperature. That looks beautiful. I'm so excited. You could serve that with ice cream, a la mode, or whipped cream, or just like it is. I hope you guys test out this cheery cherry pie recipe. There's just really not a lot better than pie, homemade pie, for the people you love. I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did, subscribe to my channel. you never know what I'll be cooking up next.